Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Logical Nonsense Podcast. Today we have Craig Thorne on today. He is a past music journalist, social media guru, and a podcaster. How are we doing, Craig?
Good, my man. Thank you for having us on, brother. Appreciate you.
Of course, of
Hell
course.
yeah.
Before we get into it, I would like to have you introduce yourself, kind of your background, what you're about.
Absolutely, man. Yeah, so Craig is my govy, but I guess I go by C
Okay.
typically. Either or, it's all the same thing. So yeah, man, from Melbourne, Australia. I'm out here in Canada. I've been here for 13 years. Like you said, I was doing music journalism since I want to say 2001.
Oh
I did that
wow.
for a number of years, probably God, it's forever ago, but like probably like 4 or 5 years, maybe
Yeah.
a little longer. I was one of few. Obviously, Australia doesn't have a huge number of like hip hop and R&B journalists. There was like three of us. Like that's probably
Yeah.
exaggerating, but yeah. So that was something that did for a while. I've been making music, so I've been rapping since I was like 16. But I started putting music out in '02. I think I recorded for the first time in '01. So
Oh
yeah,
wow.
21, 22 years. That's been a hot minute. I'm on a bit of a like the first time ever. I didn't release anything this year, 2023. So it's nice to have a break and see what
Yeah.
get re-inspired, because right now I don't know if I'll keep going, but we'll see. Yeah, I own a social media marketing agency for about 8, 9 years that you mentioned there, and I also have a host two podcasts. One is about craft beer, which is the set that I'm on now, called Beer and Other Shit, and the other one's called Bad Habits, which is like a hip hop kind of culture podcast. So yeah,
That's
man,
awesome.
staying busy.
Yeah. No, we like to stay busy. So
Hell
that's
yeah.
awesome. That's awesome to hear. And you've got a really interesting background. I think one of the most diverse backgrounds of I've heard on, at least on this podcast. I mean, that's crazy. So super excited to get into it.
Yeah, dude.
Before we get into it though, with your podcast and just in general, what would you say like your mission is?
In general, that's a good question. I guess I always like to put out quality. I was about to say content. That's not the right word, because I feel like content's like throwaway. Like just
Yeah.
quality, like messages into the world in anything that we do, with whether it's like essentially delivering value to people in whichever format that they like. And if I'm passionate about something, to put it out there and to promote that thing. So through the hip hop journalism, I was able to write about artists for the most part. That's a little biased because you get assigned stories and you don't really have
Yeah.
a choice. But say with the music, the messages that I've been putting out through the music, I feel was important, which is something that lacked back then and lacks even more today, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Well, depends what you're into. So with craft beer, I think I'm passionate about craft beer, and I want to make sure that that industry continues to thrive and more people, if you're into that type of into drinking, I guess not everyone's into that, but you
Yeah.
know, promoting just good stuff, man. The same with like the podcasting and just being positive, and yeah, we don't really deal with negative stuff. So I'd say just putting positivity out into the world and making things better with the agency, helping businesses. Like we got a YouTube channel and stuff, so helping businesses just be better online. And a lot of people need a lot of help. So yeah, man, I would say that would be the mission overall.
Absolutely. That's awesome to hear. I think the more positive we can bring into this world, the better. Because I mean, just look at a comment section nowadays. Like it's full of hate. It's full of negativity, and like yeah, sometimes there's a comedic kind of initiative or
Like
kind
angle
of thing,
maybe.
but
Yeah.
like sometimes it's not. There's some malicious stuff out there. So I love
Rough.
that you're bringing out positivity into the world. We definitely need it as a world. So good for you.
Appreciate you, man.
Let's hop into your hip hop side of things.
Yeah,
That's
dude.
definitely what caught my eye about you. Before I get into super deep,
Yes.
when you were covering music, was it
Yes.
Australian music? Was it American music? Was it the whole world? What specific country were you covering?
Primarily Australian and American. I
Okay.
don't recall much British stuff, but to put it simply, it was more like hip hop and R&B.
Yeah.
So I had the quick version of it. There was a website called doesn't exist now, called groovon.com.au, and this is you look pretty young. How old are you, if you don't mind me asking?
I am 22.
22. So you would have been a tiny young man at the time, but like like probably '01, like forums were like popping.
Yeah.
So like There isn't that many, maybe kinda like Reddit, I guess, but, like, websites had their own forums, so
Yeah.
this was like an R&B hip hop culture kinda website. There was a whole bunch of people that were just talking about different stuff there, so then I met a bunch of friends through that and ended up writing for the site and becoming, like, the senior writer for that website, and then the owner of the site, we became friends, then he hooked me up with other jobs, so then I wrote for I don't know if they exist. I know you're out in Portland. They were a bigger thing back in the day, but like it was called street press. So like those like
Oh,
newspapers type things that are just like
yeah.
on the corner of the street in those little boxes
Yeah.
or whatever. So like those things. So there was two different ones in Melbourne at the time, and I did a column for one of them and like an R&B column every week, like what was happening, any new major music or like club nights and some, stuff like that. And then I would also do like cut like stories. So I could pitch them or they would be like, "Hey, I need you to talk to this person." So then
Yeah.
this is how old school it was. I had to get the speakerphone and I get it's called a dictaphone. So it's like a mini cassette. Like the cassettes are like an inch and a half
Yeah.
wide, and held it up to the phone and had to spend my own money. And I was getting paid $25 Australian an article at the time, which is whack, and had to call them internationally and then record the speakerphone and then transcribe it and do the thing. So it was
That's ridiculous.
yeah, it was pretty wild. And then there was another hip hop magazine called Out for Fame I used to write for as well. That was more fun because it was a bit more like grimy hip hop. So I kind of got a bit of everything, but most of the rap music that I covered was American, but there was some of the larger Australian ones.
Well, that's awesome. I again, like, I think it's cool that, you got to follow 2 different countries' music, you weren't kind of, like, just narrowed to one, so
Kept it more interesting, but there wasn't much Aussie rap at the time. There was some. Well, I wasn't the hugest fan of it, if I'm honest, but I mean, it's significantly better now. It's just obviously we came up on the American stuff, so that was more
yeah.
important to me to write about because that was what I was into. Makes it easier.
Yeah, no, that's interesting because I've always wondered, like, Americans were kind of, ignorant to different countries' music, I would say a lot of times, so it's interesting
Okay.
to, like, hear about, Australian rap. I mean,
Yeah,
I didn't know that was a
I think
genre, and I didn't and to be honest, and I don't even know if it's super popular over there. Like, I couldn't tell you that, so
it is now. I think in the time it was very like rudimentary. Like I thought it's a whole other conversation, but it was very like one dimensional and like it sounded weird when people rapped in my sort of speaking voice. I personally still
yeah,
even to this day don't love it, but that's the way they did. And they talked about like typical Aussie stuff, barbecues and shit. Like it was kind of whack to me at the time. But there was some bigger ones like the Hilltop Hoods who I did some stories on. Like we opened for them in Montreal. Like I think it was 2014. So that was like a cool full circle. I wrote their bio, wrote a cover story on them in like
yeah.
'02 and then '03, and then got to open for them like a decade, no, 2 decades. No, I don't know math anymore. Whatever. A long time later. It was cool, man. It was cool. But yeah, the music out there is definitely pretty big now, as in like some of my friends that we came up with out there became big. One of my boys, 360, is like 6 times platinum and stuff. So like
Oh,
it's
wow.
big stuff, like
That's
celebrity
that's
status
crazy.
doesn't can't difficult to leave his house level type stuff. So it's it's
Wow.
it's very interesting.
Yeah. No, that is super interesting. Who was the most interesting interaction you had? I know you talked about, like, you interviewed a lot of people. What was,
Mhm.
like, the most interesting one you had?
One of the coolest was Exhibit because it was in person. All the rest of them
Ooh,
were over the phone. So that was for the Out for Fame magazine. So me and the main owner of that went to like a hotel in Melbourne. He was touring. So we got to like sit in the conference room and he seemed like disinterested, like he's there for a press day. And
yeah.
he's just answering the same questions all day. Like he was chill. And I was a big fan of him when you know who I'm talking about?
Yeah.
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 Do you know him from Pimp My Ride or you know him from music?
I know him from music. He's on, that Dr. Dre song.
Yeah.
Um,
Bitch Please. He was on.
yes,
Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes.
So we were listening to him at like 95 when his first album. So it was a big deal for me. I was pretty stoked to sit in a room with him. So that was cool. Other ones we did that were pretty sweet. There was a tour in like I think it was 2003. It was called like Disturbance or something, and they had like the Luniz who did I Got Five on it. They had the Dog Pound. They had Tech Nine,
Yep.
probably some other people. So I got to be like the main journalist to interview all of them. because I knew like so it was like some like local club DJ who was the promoter too. So I knew him. So then he put me on that. So then I got to speak to them all over the phone. But then we got to go like backstage at the show. So I got Corrupt
Mm,
from the Dog Pound to sign all of my album, like the Dre Chronic album and Snoop Doggy Style, everything that he was on. I got him to
yeah,
sign that, and that was pretty dope. Actually, getting to. I mean, we idolize these guys, man. And in Australia, it's different than the States where nobody came out there because think how far
yeah,
it is, and you got to bring a whole team and all of the equipment. It's like very
yep,
expensive, and the audience in Australia wasn't primed for that. So I felt like when the opportunity came to ever like hang with people, it was like
yeah,
sick, and we got to hang out with like the Luniz guys. Are you familiar with the "I Got Five on It" joint? You
yeah,
know the song?
yeah,
So,
yeah,
like,
yeah.
Yuck Mouth was like I was also a promoter at a club at the time, so, like, we'd get him into the club and tell them, "Hey, look, we got these guys coming," and he was just, like, cracking open cigars and rolling blunts in the middle of the dance floor, like, very illegal type shit, and just, like, there was these little piles of tobacco all around the fucking club
Oh
because he
my
was just, like,
god.
splitting them open. Like, it was just so funny. These guys were just, like, in their own world. It was fun, though. It was a good time.
That's yeah, that's interesting. How was
Wild.
Tech Nine? Because he has one of the most loyal fan bases, and he's still going. I mean,
Still going. He was
he
so
puts out
cool.
music a lot, and like
Yep.
when I talk to fans of Tech Nine, like they are in on him. Like they will defend him to the
Yeah.
grave. They love that man.
He's like it's like no, I was about to say cult, but I didn't mean it in a bad way. Like, he
No,
was
it kind of
so
is a cult
nice.
in a way.
I
Yeah,
mean, it kind of is, right? Like, there's I feel like he's like, if I'm not mistaken, he's gotta be one of the biggest, independent rappers if
yeah,
I'm like, maybe along like Insane Clown Posse have the Juggalo thing, the meeting. So I
yeah.
feel like it's like less weird fans than that, but the same type of vibe.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
'Cause I was doing music, the producer I was working with at the time, he was cool. He let us come to his hotel room, and
Oh,
we'd
wow.
playing him beats from my boy to try and get him to, work with him and stuff. But just, hey, come into the room, you think he's this, red-haired dude, super like, at the time, like, this is '03, so he must have been relatively famous, to tour Australia,
Yeah,
but, um, welcome, "Hey, you guys need a drink?" Like, just, like, super cool. It's just, like, maybe they're grateful as well to be that far from home and just be like, man, there's people on this the largest island on the other side of the world wanting to hear me. And I feel like now I haven't talked about or thought about this stuff in a long time. So this is super cool for me too, bro. The maybe it was his gratitude that is why he's so successful today. Like, he was just so humble and chill. And if
yeah,
he's continued to be like that, that could be why he's still thriving and just anything he puts out. Like you said, fans defend him and just love him and buy his stuff. It's
yeah.
cool.
No, that's an
Very dope.
interesting point that you bring up too, because I think in specifically in the rap culture, like you get a lot of arrogant personalities. And so
Unfortunately.
he's kind of for lack of a better term, like he's much different like than a lot of the rappers and their personalities, which is probably why he has such a cult following.
It's a great point. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised just seeing that and now reflecting on that. I'm like, yeah, that's probably it. So, man, more power to him, just being cool like that. And we were young too. Probably at the time I was your age. I think I was 22 in '03. So that was just like so dope being young hip hop fan growing up when nobody else really listened to it. I got a lot of shit for at school because no one else did, and people made fun of me and my brother, and I didn't really have many friends there who listened to rap music, and it was something that was important to us. So to actually come around, be around these people and like be able to write about it, talk about it, go backstage with them, and just it was very meaningful for me back then. It was very cool.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, you've had so many different hustles, really. I mean, like I talked about your resume, but like also like as a music journalist, you were also creating your own music, correct? So like
Yes, sir.
what it was it like a direct kind of thing where you would meet these rappers or interview these rappers and be like, wow, like I gotta bring some of that inspiration, or did you see things like, wow, I need to bring that element into my own music?
For sure. Absolutely. It was just cool to see it up close because you listen to it, but you don't really think about the person behind it. So
Yeah.
then you get to meet these people in various forms of sometimes if it's just over the phone, it's a little harder to connect because you're not looking at them, but and like Corrupt, it was backstage. He was pretty lit. Um, so like, there are different, whereas Tech Nine was just in his hotel. I can't remember when it was, and we're hanging out with Yuckmouth and Drew Down and stuff like that. So they were all in different ways, but just seeing them and getting to sort of at least some of their time was super like, all right, man, like we can do this. Like this is cool. So it didn't really, I don't know if it specifically led to anything. I don't think there was any opportunities for our music that came from that because we were like really fresh at the time as well. So if it was '03 doing a lot of these bigger interviews, I would have been like a year or two into like putting music out. So it wasn't probably a little too young to and just fresh in the game for that. But yeah, man, super cool just to see it up close because you don't, particularly at the time before social media, you didn't see
Really get that.
people. You didn't get it, man. Everything was a mystery. You only got a little magazine article here and there. So to
Yeah.
be in their presence was like, oh wow. And it just was like you shook, like you just can't believe it. It's
Yeah.
so crazy. Whereas I feel like now, I don't know, I haven't met anyone famous for a bit, but like I feel like you'd just be like, and see him on
Yeah,
Instagram
no, that's a
stories
good
every
point.
day.
It's like
You know,
I mean, with like all the different social media platforms now, like you see the behind the scenes all the time. Like you see the different processes, and I mean, there's so many documentaries out now too. Like you look at like
it's a good
Genius. I
point.
mean that was a big
Yeah,
one. That I thought that was a super
the
interesting and
best.
intriguing one. But like it's definitely more available to people on like how this kind of stuff works versus
Yeah, and
like back in
mm.
2003.
You're right though about the Genius though. So this made me think that like all of the footage that you're seeing from Ye at the time was just dudes with handy cams because we didn't have a computer in our pocket. We
Yeah.
had phones, but they
Uh
didn't
huh.
have a camera. And they were just the push button. Like I had the Nokia joints, and people probably had Blackberries or whatever
Yeah.
at the time.
Yeah.
So it's like it didn't like you didn't just not everything was filmed because you didn't have that capability. So you just like you lived in
Yeah, it
the
was actually
moment.
hard. Yeah.
Yeah, so, like, I remember one of the coolest stories ever, ever, ever was not even to do with the journalism, but when I was the club promoter in December, it was December. Today's December 6th, it was December 4th, 2001, because 'cause I'll never forget it. I walked in the club and Aaliyah is standing, this was, like, 8 months
Oh,
before she
wow.
died, standing on the stage dancing with some dude, which I found out later was her brother. I was like, "Oh my," and she was, like, always since I was, like, 13, because
Uh-huh.
her first album came out in '94, like,
Yeah.
the had the biggest crush on her forever. I'm like, "Oh my god," and I didn't have a pen because this is what you did. I went to the bar, I
Yeah.
was like, "Yo, can I get a pen?" He's like, he's like, "Yeah, sure, just bring her back." I'm like, "No worries." So I went up to her and, I kinda, like, just tapped her elbow. I was like, "Hey, can I get," and she just signed. I was, like, a DJ at the time, so, like, I guess I've always had hustle, so I had a business card, and she signed the back. I have it laminated just over there, but signed the back of the business card, and then a guy behind me was like, "Hey, can I use the pen?" I was like, "Yeah, sure," and I probably fucked up a night, make everyone sign stuff, but just, like, you walk in, I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that she's just standing there because she was filming that Queen of the Damned movie in Melbourne at the time. So sometimes you
That's
just stumble on amazing things, you know?
that's ridiculous. Yeah. No, I mean, like,
It is.
she's like a legend in
Was it
the
2000? Not
R&B
2000,
world.
it was 2000. Oh, for sure, man. She was huge. Like, and I didn't even get to experience it. I was a child, like, my first album came out when I was 13, so I didn't get to really, if I was like 25 or whatever when the album came out, you really got to see it and you were and over here. But there I was like, me and my brother listening to it, a couple friends type of thing. But it was just cool to see that type of thing in person, like because I bet she could probably live a somewhat normal life, even though she was big at the time. It was you know, a really big celebrity wouldn't just be able to dance in a club. Like there's like an elevated stage, but anyone can go up there and dance. So like imagine that now and like, I don't know, if Kanye went to a club, he's getting mobbed. He can't just stand in a club and dance. So I think that was something kind of cool for them,
Yeah.
maybe because in the States, she might not have been able to do that because she
Yeah.
was a movie star too at the time. So it's
No,
interesting. It's very
that's
interesting.
another interesting perspective because it's like like no celebrity with like social media, how everyone kind of knows everyone. Like you can't go anywhere.
Hell
Like it
no.
doesn't matter where you're going in the world now. Like people know you, especially if you're like in a I don't know. Like that's crazy. So
A reasonable size, yeah. Got a decent following, like, you're not gonna be able to have any sort of privacy unless it's, like, somewhere
no,
super, like, not connected or that
no.
that culture isn't prevalent at all, but any Western country or Europe or something like that, for sure, like, most of the celebrities that you and I would know would be not wouldn't really be able to do too much unless it's sort of like chauffeured in and all that, you know?
Yeah.
Wow.
Hmm, interesting.
Yeah, man.
Are there any other notable names that you've interviewed, like, either over the phone or in person that you can
Yeah,
think
so
of?
I remember talking to MC Ren from NWA. That was
Yep.
super cool because he talked
That's
exactly like he raps, like N-word every other word, motherfucker every other word. It
Yeah.
was that was just like, "Oh, wow," like, he is who he says he is, you know?
Yeah.
Um, Exhibit was good. Doing the cover story was a big deal to actually write the story that was on the cover of the magazine. That was the
Yeah.
one and only one that I ever got on Hilltop Hoods, who and like the Aussie group. They was whilst I wasn't like a huge fan of them at the time, to see them, they're like massive now. Like they do shows with like symphony orchestras and
Wow.
tour the world type of thing. So doing
Yeah.
that was super cool just as like, I guess doing it pretty early on and then
Yeah.
seeing that trajectory
Early on
was
the
super
train.
cool. Yeah, I'm having a blank. I did a lot of album reviews as well. That was sort of how it
Yeah.
started. So I would just, like, get free CDs. Hell yeah, bro. Like, obviously now
Yep.
that's completely worthless, but at the time I was spending and in Australia, bro, like over here, maybe you're too young to remember, like, you probably would have grown up in a post CD world, I guess.
No,
Is that no?
we had little binders with the
Okay, you
CDs
rock
and you
that.
flip through
Okay.
them. Yeah, no, I had my growing up CD era. I mean, I was on, like, the downturn of it, but I definitely grew up with CDs.
You got to experience it. Good for you. That's good because it makes you appreciate it and stuff. So then
Oh,
how
yeah.
much was a CD over here? If you were to go and buy a new album from whatever store, Best Buy or something, how much would that be?
Oh gosh, back then, I
Like
wanna s
10 to
like, it was at least
15 would be
20
my
bucks.
guess. Oh, 20.
15 to 20. 15 to 20, I would say.
Okay. All right. That's more expensive than I thought. So maybe because I saw it on the real tail end, I feel like things over here in Canada even were a little bit cheaper than that. But everything was like minimum 25 to 30. And if you wanted to get what they called like an import CD, it was ones that didn't get an Australian release. So that means the store had to order it from the label or the distributor or whatever to get shipped out. So then it was like 40, $50.
Oh,
And
jeez.
I was like, that was the only way to get the music. There was no like sort of, I mean, maybe LimeWire and stuff were around then. I can't remember. I just like to buy them because I wanted the physical like thing to have with the I liked reading the what
Yep.
do you call it, the cover and all that stuff. So like I was dropping like mad money on CDs. So to get free CDs to write
It's a big deal.
3 to 500 words, I was like, bro, no, say less. Like that's amazing. So it was that was that was pretty cool. But I can't think of anyone else off the top of my head. It's just been so long. I wish I probably think of something in like half an hour, but fuck, I should have brought it up. But, those ones were really impactful, like, all of those were the main ones that probably, like, were, like, super things that we'll always remember and were just cool experiences for, like, a young dude, like, getting involved in it and sort of encouraged to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. Do you like album reviews? Because, like, that's definitely a segment I do on my podcast, and I love album reviews. I think it's especially interesting because it pushes me to listen to music that I
Hmm.
don't always listen to, and artists I don't always gravitate towards, but I don't know. What was your thoughts as a journalist, like, having to review those albums?
I liked it for the most part, and this is kind of a question for you as well, like, if it was an artist that I was into, like, I didn't say it was, like, there was something new that I wasn't getting sent, I would just review it because I know it'd be good to have that on the website or whatever, so I'd be like,
Yeah.
"Cool, whatever." So I'd do my own ones, and that was always cool because 'cause I'm listening regardless, but when I was sent stuff, there was 2 ways it usually goes. There was sometimes I would get stuff that I've never heard of, and I'd be like, "Yo, this is amazing." This was a whole bunch of
Yeah.
music that I got that were, that was just so cool to me, and that one of them, for quick example, was this rapper from Philly called Hezekiah, and I got in touch with him. I reviewed his album, I can't remember what year it was. It was called I Predict a Riot, and it's still to this day one of my favorite albums, and I ended up getting him to produce a song for me and getting him to do a feature verse. And then like that was in like '08. And then when I moved here, I kept in kind of touch with him because he was just cool. And then like 2014, we brought him up to Canada and did a music video for that song. So like
Oh,
it was kind
wow.
of all from getting a free CD and doing a review. So that was like by far the coolest thing. And that was a minority of the time. Then there were other ones, and I think this is why I am like I am today. Like I suffer through stuff. Like say if there's an album, I'm like, I gotta listen to the whole thing before I can shit on anything.
Yeah,
So I
that's
force
yeah.
myself. I don't know if you do if you're doing the album review, sometimes it's like an effort
Oh,
to like
yeah.
to get through it
Yeah,
because
there's
you know
been
you yeah,
multiple where I've, like,
force
struggled my
yourself, eh?
way through an album. I mean, like, even this year, like, I honestly don't think this year has been that great, at least in far of hip hop.
I agree with that.
I think, like, especially compared to, like, what we've gotten the last couple years, like, there's been some great, great albums the last few years. But this year has been kind of
Pretty
underwhelming in
mid.
my opinion, at least the density of it. And so this year's been there's been some albums where I'm just like, holy shit, I can't press skip fast enough. Like, and I know I
You
can't
skip?
because it's like this
Or you
is my
don't skip?
content. Like I have to ingest it. I have to understand what isn't working within this album because if I don't, then I can't just get on a mic and tell my audience like, hey, this album sucks. I don't really
I
like
listened to
it, and
30
I can't
seconds
really
of each song.
explain why. Yeah,
Yeah.
but
Okay, so you're doing it properly. You're doing like real journalists, like music journalist sort of stuff where like I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't think you can review anything without consuming the whole thing. Cause as someone who made music or makes whatever present tense, but you need to sort of capture the whole thing. If you just hear half of the first verse and maybe the
yeah,
intro hook or something, like it's not enough to capture what they're saying. Like sometimes it is enough, to be fair, maybe some of the songs are,
yeah,
just party songs or just the typical kind of type of stuff, but you just need to listen to it to
yeah,
really go, and I think most people don't have that patience. And I think even now to this day, one of the things on my Spotify Wrapped, like last week or whatever, was like, you listen to everything all the way through. I can't remember in what context it said that, but I just thought it was pretty funny. So I was like, oh, well, yeah, that's
yeah,
right. I do. I just let it run, even if it sucks. And then I'll pretty like, cool, I'll never listen to that again. Or I'll listen to those 4 songs again and everything else.
yeah,
Like dash that.
yeah. No, I think like it's definitely a specific sort of person because like I know not everyone listens to every single song in an album. Like
Yeah.
majority of people, I would say, probably skip through an album. And honestly, a lot of times they'll even listen to the first 30 seconds of a song, and if it's not what they like, then they'll skip to the next, or if they haven't heard it before. So like I know I'm different when it listens to music, and like you said, it's probably the more journalistic way, but I think it's the most fair way.
I agree. It's hard to critique whether it's in words or spoken, a
Yeah,
project if you haven't given it a full chance. And I'd like if someone was to do that for my music and not give it that full chance, I'd discount that review and any of their feelings. Like, well, you didn't consume the whole thing. You didn't think about the themes that connected together and like sonically what were they trying to do and you know all those
yeah.
different things that go into an album because making an album is a whole thing. It's a lot of
Oh
work and
yeah,
like it's
absolutely.
I understand today it's a little different. People are sloppier and just kind of do
Oh
whatever
yeah,
a lot, but
trying to
still,
rush things.
yeah. If you're gonna shit on something, just like you can't go and watch 10 minutes of a movie and say, oh shit. Like,
Yep.
just finish it, bro. If you're gonna review it, you're gonna talk. Otherwise, don't talk about it. That's all.
Yeah, and I also think there's something to be said about, like, things aging too, like, you shouldn't just form an opinion on your first listen. Because like, there'll be times where,
Great
like, I'll
point.
literally have to listen to an album 2 or 3 times before I can fully gather my thoughts on it. Because like, sometimes it's so much coming at me, like, there's so much happening with the production, with the flows, with the lyrics, and just I just gotta, like, sit there in a room with my headphones alone looking like crazy person, but I mean, it
That's right.
works. So,
I think
yeah.
it's the only way to do it. Actually, you're 100% on that. I was trying as you were saying, I was like, oh, what was my process? And I actually don't remember. I reckon I probably gave it like a few listens because, like, do you take notes when you're listening to
I
it?
do. I
You
do.
do take notes. Do you take notes on the
I
first listen or on like the third or whatever?
so it depends on a few things. If I
Okay.
listen through it on the first time and, I'm halfway through the album. Okay, let me back up. So
Yeah, yeah.
I usually will. start taking notes. So when I
Okay.
first started out, I'll start taking notes to the first listen. But if I think this album is going to take more than one listen, just based off my first listen to like fully gather my thoughts, I'll stop taking notes because I'll save
Okay.
it for that second or third listen. If I'm listening through it and I'm halfway through and I'm like, okay, this content really isn't super deep for me, I could probably just take notes now. Then I take notes now and then I revisit them on that second listen just to make sure that
You
they're
still
I
feel the
agree
same
with
way.
it still. Yeah.
I like that. I think it's fair to take him on the first listen because there's almost something like something kind of cool. There was this I think it's still around called djbooth.com. And there was
Yeah.
this writer named Yay familiar? Yeah. This writer named YOH, and he went off to start that rap portraits thing, who just did that little brother documentary, May the Lord Watch, which was phenomenal. And he used to do these first listen album reviews, and his rule is like one listen, no skips, and you just take notes while you're listening to it. So like he had a whole content piece. There was a thing he continued to do where he used to first listen reviews, and I always thought that was kind of cool because like imagine
Yeah.
trying to do that for Kendrick's album, which is
Oh god.
so
Dense.
intense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's super dense, and just really you have to give it multiple listens. So it probably would have been pointless for that. But then if you're listening
Mhm.
to, I don't want to take any shots, but I don't know, Sexy Red or something, you're like, okay, well, what you see is what
Yeah.
you get. It's, you know, you know what she's about. So you're like, all right, cool. I don't really need to think about this too much. And you can do that first time. So, because those first thoughts sometimes are kind of could be on point. So it's kind of worth like doing it
Yeah.
that way. I like that. Yeah,
Yeah. Interesting.
that's dope.
Who's your I know we talked about most interesting, we talked about most notable. Who's your favorite though? Just favorite. And
Interview
you might have said it already, and if you did, you can just
from back in the day, because I don't right now for the pod for our it's called Bad Habits, our hip hop pod. We've done interviews, but it's almost always been our music friends, like who are active in the scene,
yeah.
as opposed to like randoms. People will reach out to be on, but typically don't. Um, Probably the favorite. I would say just probably the MC Ren one, just because it was
Yeah.
like you're like, oh, like you are exactly who you say you
Crazy.
are, and it was just sort of like that was even more trippy because that was from I was mad young listening to that. Definitely should not have been listening to that, and it was just it was super cool, like them even taking the time to do it and promote
Yeah.
stuff in Australia. I thought was pretty cool. That I mean, I guess it's not him; it would have been his publicist who was from the label or management team, blah blah blah, but yeah, it was just cool to actually sort of, oh man, I wish I did more of them in person in hindsight, but there wasn't that many opportunities. And they say if an artist is coming out next month, of course they're
Yeah.
not going to be here for me to do it. I have to do it over the phone to
Yeah.
then put it out in the magazine to therefore promote it. So I sort of didn't get those opportunities as much. I felt like that would be cooler, and I wish that it's almost like it was ahead of the time. Like it would have been cooler to do a lot of those in video format. To like if it was some sort of a
Yeah.
video platform you could have been able to interview people in, that would have been much cooler. Just to
Yeah.
get to know them a bit better, and like you might actually get to know them. Like if you do long form interviews, like I do. I don't know about you, most of your pods, but all of my stuff is long form. And when you hang out with people for a few hours, you start to get to know them and stuff. And it's I prefer that. I think it's cool.
I definitely prefer like when I can, start to feel like the vibes of another person, like especially as the more you get to talk to them, the more they answer questions, that kind of thing. So
Yeah.
definitely on board with that. Before I proceed any longer, I do realize I spelled singer wrong. So there's that. But
Oh yeah, it's okay.
but I do have a question with that. NWA, how
Mm,
did you think they executed the movie? Because I'm assuming you've watched the movie.
yeah.
You haven't,
Yeah, I
no
have, yeah,
worries.
yeah.
But how do you think? Because you've interviewed MC Ren, how do they portray him? Like, did they portray him correctly?
From what I could tell, I don't know if I'm necessarily sort of an expert as such, but I felt that like everything was pretty on point. I feel like that even just the fact they cast like Cube's son as him was
Yeah,
even cooler. And I was listening to Cube, I think he was on Rogan or whatever, and he was saying that they made his son audition. So he had to work for it. Like he didn't just like get
that's
given the part.
cool. That's
He had
really
to
cool,
actually get
actually.
it. So to me, that fact alone says that they chose the best person for the job. And I felt like I think those biopics are so tough. Like, how are you supposed to capture all of that? And then they have to dramatize it, otherwise it's not a movie. So, like,
Yeah.
it starts to become a bit fluffy and a bit like, "Oh, it didn't quite happen like that," you know?
Yeah.
But I think overall, it probably was a good thing for their legacy as far as think of the awareness. Like, we're
Oh,
still
yeah,
talking of when did
absolutely.
that come out? It must have been 5 plus years
Oh,
ago?
yeah, I think
Without Googling it,
I
I
I mean,
can
it was a
that was
decent long time ago, but I don't know. It was probably at least 5 years ago, if
at
not more.
least. I bet it was probably more. The,
Yeah.
so think about that, the fact that we're still talking about that movie as far as, like, rap biopics. I don't even know of any other one that's had that level of, like,
Legacy.
legacy success as far as mainstream, representation.
Yeah.
Like, people were
Yeah.
talking about it everywhere, and they even had that sick, social media campaign
Yep.
with that, like,
Straight Outta,
straight out
yeah.
which was like, "Yo, that was so fire," and,
How
like,
many shirts do you see of those too? Yeah.
people exactly, people go use that same font and, like, put the I don't know, that was just so well executed, though, and I think it was, like, a great package, and there's, like because they were, like, came out in the late '80s, it was, like, this is nostalgia factor, and nostalgia is cool right now as far as, like, using a lot of '90s, '80s samples in music, and, like,
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
fashion's coming back, and, like, dudes wearing baggy pants again, which is like, "Oh, for fuck's sake." But, like, you know, it's interesting, so I think they did a pretty dope job on that one. Good for them. I hope there's more like it, man, for other if there I bet there is, and I maybe haven't I just missed them.
Yeah, no,
There
I
has to be.
I would encourage them to continue to do that, like, they have so many artists, I think, like, they can continue to do that. I mean, I feel like we're in, like, kind of a documentary era anyways, so, I mean, like,
Yeah.
obviously, that was a movie, and so I wouldn't say it's a documentary, but it in ways kind of was. It was kind of a dramatic documentary,
Mm.
so I think they should continue to tell those stories because it really rejuvenates their, not
Like the
career. I
brand?
don't wanna say rejuvenate, that's not the right word. I would say it kind of brings back, the remembrance, the legacies, continues to carry what they did and how they succeeded back in the day
Yeah,
to younger generations.
I agree. I like the docos better too when you're like the films are cool, but, like, just watching that Little Brother documentary was so fire. I'm like,
Yeah.
I wanna see more like that because
Yep.
it's them saying it in their own words, and I think as an artist, I mean, obviously, not even in anywhere near that stratosphere, but, like, if you're going to capture your career, the path, the whole thing, like, don't you wanna talk about that in your own way and not have somebody kind of made up these fanciful situations that don't accurately reflect what happened, and then maybe it makes some people look bad or whatever, whatever. So, like, I think the documentaries are the way to go for sure. Definitely wanna see more of that. Even self-produced.
Yeah.
So then you have real control over like, every element of it. It's dope.
Yeah. We're waiting for that Jay-Z film or documentary
Did you
or
ever see Fade to
whatever.
Black?
What's up?
Did you see Fade to Black?
I did not.
So that was Jay's doco in '04. It dropped based on the making of the album. That was one
Oh,
of the cool
wow.
one I guess it wasn't about his life actually, so it's kind of what you're talking about, but I saw it I was living in Toronto at the time, I was doing the 1-year work and holiday visa, and it came out when we were traveling, and we saw it at, like, Times Square in the movie
That's
theater in New York,
incredible.
which was a perfect place to watch that right as the album had come out, and, like, that was, when Kanye was, like, popping, so it was, like, just started popping. So it was a really good time to see. So that was cool because it showed this, like, the studio sessions and how, like, they made it and, like,
Mhm.
Jay hearing the dirt off your shoulder bit. You'll know some of the clips, like, they re-released some of the ones where Timbo was playing him
Oh,
the
yeah,
beats
yeah,
and stuff,
yeah. Yeah,
and
yeah.
he's drinking that big ass, orange juice out of,
Yep.
like a 2-liter bottle type of thing, yeah. Good
That's
times.
yeah, that's super cool.
Yeah.
Um, what is your favorite what is your favorite rap subgenre? Or, like, what is a rap subgenre that interests you the most? Obviously, as this sort of genre of music has continued to live on, we've got trap now, we have, drill rap
Right.
now, we have all sorts of different types of rap. What is your favorite or most interesting one?
I would say still probably like I don't know if this is what it would be even called but like conscious rap or like the stuff that okay, the artists that I would consider like under this, and tell me what you think it would be called too, because I think it was always called like conscious rap, but
Yeah,
it just meant it wasn't like cars and money rap. So like the Roots, Common, Talib Kweli, Most Def, early Kanye, Little Brother, like all those like Dead Prez, like those cats, all the artists that performed at Dave Chappelle's block party in '04, on that event, which was amazing, along with the Roots, the OK Player. So on Roots, the brand OK Player, that was their original website. They had a whole bunch of like artists sort of through that. Like Dilla was part of all that type of stuff. Like Tribe Called Quest, you could probably add them into that too. Just like wrapped it with a message. Like not
yeah,
everyone wants to hear
more
music with a
lyrical.
message. Yeah, lyrical stuff. I just prefer that. I don't have a problem with the less lyrical stuff. I just prefer that because I think I don't know, like I guess people don't listen to music always for a message and they don't want to have to
Oh,
learn
absolutely.
something.
Yeah.
So I totally get it. I don't
Yes.
know. If
Yes.
you're making I guess it's the same. Imagine if you're a producer, like I imagine you'd want to listen to the type of stuff that like inspires you, like, oh shit, like look what they just did with that. So with the lyrical stuff, if we're writing lyrics, for me, I want to listen to stuff that's going to inspire me to
Yeah. Tells a
continue to
story. Yeah.
yeah, I don't know how much it's not the same anymore as
No.
far as that it was like it was a straight subculture back in the day or subgenre back in the day.
Yeah.
When I say back in the day, like probably around the same era, like Little Brother came out in '02. I can't remember when OK Player, that must have been late '90s. And all of that, and they were all lumped in with the neo soul stuff, Badu and D'Angelo and Maxwell and Anthony Hamilton, Jill Scott, like Music Soul Child, all that type of stuff. Everyone was like working together and it
Yep.
was just such because that was my other favorite genre. It's not just hip hop, but the like R&B, like neo soul was always my jam. So like those two together, yeah, there's not really much of it. It's not like associated with it, and there's not like sorry associated with other artists. They're not like crews releasing stuff like they used to be.
Yeah.
And I feel like the few and like even just like J. Cole stuff has been really dope lately. Like his bars and stuff have been A1. And there's a bunch of
Yeah.
other, there's other cats similar, but I would probably say that'd be mine. What would be yours?
I'm actually in a very similar field. I would say you call it conscious rap, which I like. I like that. That's a good word for it. I think another word you could use for it is like like conceptual rap, just because like
Mhm.
a lot of those albums, like from those artists you're talking about, like their albums, like you said, they have a meaning. They tell a story. They have a concept behind them. Modern ones that come to mind, like yes, they're few and far between, but I still think like give your flowers to Kendrick. Obviously, like
Of course.
he's still bringing out incredible lyrical, dense content. Like you said, J. Cole was a great one. I think even a guy like Denzel Curry,
For sure.
I mean, he's done some crazy stuff that like I'm like, wow, like blown away with. So I think there's still some rappers out there, and I'm leaving a lot out too.
Like Jid,
But
Bay.
back in the day, I definitely think you are right. Like that subgenre was a big deal. But I will say this too: the people who can execute it really well, like not only be super lyrical, but also make it sound really good.
Mm,
Like those are some of the most praised.
yes. Hmm. Who
So,
would be that come under that?
ooh, I mean, like
Will that be
I think
Cole? I feel like that must be Cole, like, particularly lately. He's on a run right now.
Cole is definitely on the run. Like I would say, like going back in the day, even like look at Nas, like he's
Still going.
still going, and like people like praise him. Like I've seen him in multiple number one lists. I mean, even some of what Jay Z has done. We talked about Jay Z a little bit. Like he has some good lyrical content. I mean, he's
Incredible.
obviously like not like I don't know. I wouldn't say he's the best lyricist, but like he's definitely like top. He's up there. Like he's definitely good. So I don't know. There's definitely a lot of good lyricists back in the day. Nas, Jay Z. I mean,
Yeah,
yeah.
there's so many and I don't know why I'm having a blank, but there was definitely a lot more then, but I think there was more room for that then, and then it was like this, like, around, like, I think when Crunk came in, sort of everything changed. I think Crunk might have
Mhm.
got popping maybe '04, '05, and then it kind of merged into trap
Yep.
after that run, and then kind of everything hasn't really been the same because like a lot of people, one of my friends, I got these rapper friends in between Atlanta and Dallas called Bodega Brothers. There's three of them, and they were saying when they were playing their music to dudes in Atlanta, they were like, "Oh, bro, like chill. There's too many words. You got too many words going on." And these dudes aren't like crazy lyrical, but they're definitely more like lyric focused rappers. And when they told me that, I was like, "Oh, okay." So like I think people don't want to hear too many words sometimes, you know? So
Yeah,
it's
no, it's definitely becoming more and more, like, production based, and I'm wondering if it's
mm,
because and this is totally, like, going down a rabbit hole, but I'm wondering if it's because, like, you know, people get more and more stressed. Like, we see so much content in a day. We see so much like words we're reading, we're working, we're doing so much in a day. Like, we at the end of the day, we just want to listen to something that's like kind of just lets us relax and enjoy ourselves rather than like actually having to think, which
mm,
I like. I like thinking. I like artists who can make me think, but
I guess there's something for every mood, I guess, is what's important.
yeah.
And I think there's some people who just exclusively don't ever want to have music that makes them think, and
Mhm.
each to their own, I guess. So it's sort of, I guess that is good, but now it's like, it's just interesting that it's gone further and further from that, and there's less to choose from, or
Mhm.
if the less artists that are making that music, if you want modern stuff, or like Corday is a great example. He's amazing.
Yeah,
Um,
Corday is a good one. Yeah.
he's definitely like the future of that genre, I think, as far as the
Yep.
young kids too. And I lost it.
JID is a good one too.
Yeah, Jed's doing great. Where was I going with that? Is it like I feel like it's like the more and more, oh yeah, if you want to find new stuff that is of that kind of lyrical focus music, it's so hard now because of the noise. So like 20 years ago, and I'm not trying to say like everything was perfect 20 years ago, it was just very different. And it was like if you wanted to find that music, well, cool, go to okplayer.com and whoever they talk about, I'm probably gonna like it. And it was easy to sort of find the everyone associated together, the raucous guys with the backpack era with like,
Mhm.
Quali and Most
Yeah.
and Company Flow and all that stuff. And then now there's so much music. I hear there's like 60,000 songs per day. No, it's gotta be more than that. Some absurd number of songs per day that's put out on streaming. So imagine just trying to wade through the noise and find good artists because so many people now rap because technology, for one, when back and then you had to have mad money. In the 90s, it was like
Studio.
the
Yeah.
tapes. Then it was to buy all this stuff. It was super expensive. So then there was a financial aspect and it was just like, then what? Okay, cool. You make it. It's like when we were recording music in like '02. Cool. Now what? What are you gonna do with it? Ain't no SoundCloud, Spotify, YouTube. Like, what do? You got to press it up. You got to take it to a store, and you got to be like, "Hey, I make music. Could you put this in? If it sells, then cool. Then what though? What are you gonna do if you shoot a music video? This is you can't get it on MTV unless you're in a label. So all of these challenges now, it's just like wading through the noise. It's a complete opposite now. So now with hardly any artists, and it was so hard to get on, to now you don't need to get on, but then how do you get it found? Because it's like who has the time or the energy to like really dig? It's different challenges, I guess,
Yeah, no, it's definitely bloated. That's, like, a great
for
word
sure.
for it. I mean, like,
Loaded for
I'm
sure.
so glad, like, yes, it's more accessible. Like, I would n like, there's so many artists that, like, I probably would've never listened to, but like you said, it can definitely get overwhelming, and I think it's harder in ways it's harder and it's easier. It's harder in ways to, listen to some of the people that probably deserve recognition. But I would say it's all it takes is really one song nowadays for you to kinda blow up, so but, I mean, it's always been like that, so I don't know.
But I guess, yeah, it's the digital era was supposed to remove the gatekeepers, but I feel like it's more gate kept than ever, being that all the labels now, excuse me, have like ownership shares in Spotify. So that means unless you're signed to some sort of a major label, you're essentially not getting on any Spotify editorial playlist at all at any point in time. And that's one of the major keys. Though also it's become a song-based economy and not an artist economy. So if
Mm,
you say your 10-second clip on TikTok blows up and it's become a challenge or everyone's using it to do something.
yeah,
Cool. When's the last time you heard something that you liked on social like that and then checked out the artists? I don't think that happens very often. Maybe there's got
yeah.
to be a single digit percent of people that are going to do that. So obviously, the larger that scales, the more people that one, single digit percent represents. But for the up and coming independent artists like ourselves, or undiscovered, really is probably where we're at. Like, how do you do it? Because everything's also based on, like, social media sort of popularity is a lot based on, like, wild antics. Like, you got to do some crazy shit, or you got to say something controversial or
Mhm.
problematic or something, and it's just become this whole like clown show of just fuckery that you've got to participate in. So, like, how does an artist, someone like, a new artist, like if Corday wasn't signed or whatever, like a cat like that, who's probably your age, who's just actually dope and making dope stuff and got a message and it's a bop, but it's saying stuff. And like, all right, so how does
Mhm.
he or she get that out? Like, what do you even do? Labels only want to touch you if you've already got a following. So do you try and like, it almost seems like redundant if you've got 5,000 followers and you got to try and make a TikTok channel. It's like, who the fuck's going to do that? Like, so it's like, I don't know. I'm kind of at a loss with what you even do. You can run ads. We run a social media agency. We run ads for a lot of my music, but then like I don't know how much that really converted. I tried the Spotify ads, and when I tried it, to be fair, it wasn't as robust as I think it is now. But like, it's just it feels to me, who've participated in both eras, it feels more impossible right now to get any traction in music. I think that's why right now I'm like happy to not do it. And if I go back to making music, it'll be just because I want to make something dope and put it out in the world. I'm in the process right now of trying to re-inspire myself, my brother as well, who we work together on everything. I've gone back to the beginning, like the very beginning, and making all of that stuff and listening. I don't listen to my own stuff, so going back and revisiting it all, everything, to be like, all right, well, I've said so much. I've had hundreds and hundreds of songs out, so I'm like, why should I contribute to that pollution anymore? And I don't think people think like that. So they're like, fuck it, just put this song out, bro. Like, and then what does that really do though? Like, it gets 100 plays. Yay. Like, I don't know. It's just it's such a weird time, and it's easy to be jaded, I think, about it. And like, I just don't know what the answer is unless you want to do some crazy stuff, and I'm not interested in that. And I imagine all the artists that we're talking about would also not be interested. So it's like, I would almost argue that it's tougher than ever. You know,
Hmm. Yeah, no,
I'm not even being
that's
negative
that's
either.
super interesting perspective. Like, I didn't even when I posed that, like, I wasn't even thinking about, like, you've literally lived through both of those eras. So it's
I'd seen
interesting
it
because
change.
I think a lot of people, like, their assumption is, "Oh, it's easier." Like you said, there's SoundCloud, there's Spotify, there like, yes, there's so many streaming platforms, but it sounds like labels still control it as they did back in the day, but even more so.
Yeah, it's
You
just a
know?
different, like, before you had to get a meeting to go and play them your stuff, and then now, what do you do? Because 'Cause they're not gonna talk to you unless you got 1,000,000 followers and a hit song on TikTok already.
Yeah.
That's when they work with you, and it's because they care. Nobody cares about artists, they just care about the song. Like, it's
That's
hard
true,
for an
yeah.
artist to pick up, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's
Well,
that's
and that's
strange.
another, like, I also talk about sports on this podcast. That's like another that's a whole culture kinda thing. You
Mhm.
wanna talk about loyalty? I don't know how much of a sports fan you are, but, like, think about all the free
Excuse me.
agents and all of that who just leave now, and that's, like, accepted. Like, there's the loyalty has gone so far down, like,
Hmm.
as a cultural, like, I guess you could say moral standpoint, like loyalty towards artists, loyalty towards sports teams, loyalty towards, like, just as a general statement. Like, you even look at like Gen Z, they I want to say, like, there's some sort of statistic, like they are more likely to leave jobs like every year. Like, more
Hmm.
like it, and it makes sense. You look at like their listening habits, their content habits, like you said, it makes sense that they only are after a song and not necessarily an artist.
That's a really good parallel to make, because I know that over time it kept, like, I think it became about 2 to 3 years per job was pretty acceptable, and now you mentioned 1 year as maybe the average. I'm an employer as well, and I've hired a bunch of Gen Z, and it hasn't gone so well. So we do have one
Yeah.
now. He's amazing, but the finding the people who sort of wanna stick anything out and do stuff is that there's, like, a level. Do you know what it is as well? And this is no, like, obviously, you're extraordinarily mature and switched on for your age, dude,
Thank
by the
you.
way, like,
Thank you.
big ups for real. Um, uh, there's like an entitlement
Oh,
thing that
absolutely.
you could,
Yeah,
and I'm not
big
necessarily
time.
pointing a finger at Gen Z specifically, because I know that, millennials got I'm at the very beginning of millennials.
Yeah.
Like, so I would imagine there's probably to a degree some of us as well, but there's more just because like everything was like we had to, and I think it comes back to what we are talking about before with the CDs and like we had
Work
to work.
ethic.
There's work ethic because you had to work for and everything you
Yes,
got. Like we
yes.
got the Source magazine 3 months late in Australia, and it was like 4 times the cover price. So it said 3.95. That shit was like $16 or something. Maybe not that much, but significantly more. So we didn't get any, there was no internet to get information from. So, or if there was rudimentary internet.
Mm,
So like the concerts came out after the artist was long after they were popping type of thing. So you never got to see anything fresh. You had to order the CDs and pay 40, $50 for it. And then you were just obsessed with that because that's a lot of money for a 16-year-old to spend on a CD or whatever. So
yeah.
right now, silver platter, bro. Like everything, anything you want, you pull it up on your
Yep.
phone.
The
And like
accessibility.
and like people who grew up with that, which is why I was saying it's actually cool that you got to experience it, even if it was a tail end, you still got to deal with it. Um, and just to experience what it was to like we had to listen to the radio and like in the 90s, I guess, and like tape it. So if you hear
Mhm,
this beginning of a song or just
mhm.
before you could tell a song was coming on, you'd have it ready on play and pause, and you'd be like, all right, take pause off and record. So like you'd make mixtapes like
Yep.
live listening to the radio. So you'd even have the host talking over it because that
Burning
was the only way to hear
CDs.
the burning CDs was the next stage of that.
Yep.
Exactly. Downloading MP3s off LimeWire and stuff, and then trying to, make CDs and stuff. So like we just had to work for stuff more. And it's not saying back in my day, but it was just what it was. So you appreciate stuff. So if you have this mentality of like, oh, and that's what this Gen Z that we've hired in our business have sort of been, unfortunately, like sort of expected kind of more money or more, and they didn't do any of the work or they just weren't good at the work. Um, it was just it's very interesting to see all of that, and then I hadn't really thought about the parallel for everything about the music, about like you could say for films, they were like, oh, if it's not on Netflix, I'll just pirate it. Like
Yeah,
all
true.
these different things, the way that people, like the different generations operate, and I don't blame the generation. It's not anybody's fault when they were born, and the
Yeah,
world that they were born into,
yeah.
it just is what it is. So like yeah, I mean, you seem much more switched on and aware of that. So if you do notice any tendencies, I bet you would probably try and mitigate that in yourself because you're
I
aware.
yeah.
You know, is that
Yeah,
is
I
that
I
fair?
try, I try, for sure. It's but like you said, it's kind of a, cause and effect. I mean, we things have become so accessible for people, like, it makes sense why they're not so loyal. Like, why should
It's
I
true.
be so loyal towards something when I can just
Anything.
get it, the same thing or feeling or whatever I want tomorrow on a different thing, Like, it just makes sense, so.
Relationships too. I guess that's the Tinder era and all
Mhm,
that stuff. Like I miss
mhm,
that. I've been my girl like 12 and a half years. So we probably missed it by a year or two. I'm
mhm.
kind of glad. It felt like everyone I know who's single just complains about it. So I feel like it's every element of society is just Uber Eats,
Mhm.
DoorDash, whatever. Like right now, right now. I want the McDonald's. Get it to me now. Like,
Yep. The
yeah.
right now era.
Yeah, it's weird, but cool. It's a strange time to be alive, my man.
Yep. Yep. Okay, well, we kinda went down a rabbit hole there,
We
but I
did.
liked it. It was good conversation, I
It's
loved
good,
it a
bro.
lot. So, going back to rap,
Yes.
what is your favorite era of rap? And I kinda have a inkling on this, but I'm still gonna ask it.
It's a good question because I feel like I was talking about this on our other pod recently. I feel like and the reason why I was talking about, just for quick context, listening back and I was saying I'm listening to all my old music and seeing I feel like on our podcast, because it's me and my brother who's 2.5 years younger than me, and then our co-host who's 25. And I always feel like it's me and my brother shitting on Future and all the new music
Yeah.
that he likes. He likes the old stuff too, but he also likes that. So we're always like, that's the running sort of joke, whatever.
Yeah.
And I was listening to our music, and in our early music in the, like, I don't know, call it '05, something like that. Like we're complaining about the older people saying the rap has to be this way. And I think it's really funny that like
Keep
I'm not,
cycling.
it's psycho, and I'm not sort of like that now. Like I'm more except my brother's younger than me and more old school than me, I guess, with all that stuff. So with that said, I still do prefer, I think the music was better. There's either the early 2000s type of era. So
Yep.
like 2000 through '07, '08, which
Yep.
encompasses like that Jay-Z era of the time, Kanye, who's my goat
Yep.
personally, Fonte from Little Brother, who's my other goat.
Eminem.
Um, Eminem at the same time, exactly. Another one that a lot of like he's big now, but at the time the rappity rap heads weren't feeling it was Wayne, and we were
Yeah.
loving Wayne because he was lyrical, but the rappity rap heads didn't understand that. They thought it was like commercial or mainstream or whatever. But Carter 2, which was I think yesterday, was like the 25th anniversary or something.
Yeah.
Oh, not
Legend.
25, it won't be that. Whatever, anniversary, but it's spectacular. It's his best album. And then obviously
Mhm.
Drought 3, like the mixtapes and stuff. So I think that would be probably one of the favorite. Otherwise, like 94 through like 98 was the
Okay.
other real era, which is
Yeah.
different, but still just as fire. And it's interesting. We put Dan is his name, a 25-year-old co-host of other pod, and we put him on to say Mace recently. And now every time I see him, he's bumping Mace because and it's interesting because he never really got exposed to that. And Mace was like my guilty pleasure at the time. Like my rap head friends would have made fun of me for listening to it, but I always loved it. And it was like, it's so innocent in comparison. Like it's saying the same things. Like no, everyone's saying the same thing, but it was so innocently put. It's not like how blunt music is now, and to the point where it's like, Jesus Christ, relax, my guy. Like, so
Yeah.
I would say those
Yeah.
two eras would be. I don't know if I could probably choose. Probably the 2000s might be because like, what's that thing they say when you're like in your teen years? That's the music that
Yeah.
imprints on you,
Well, because it's, like, supposed to be, like, when you're having your best time of your life, like,
right? It was
best
like
memories or
the
whatever.
college sort of teen to
Yeah.
college kind of era, so that it kind of bled in for me. And it was like there was the music discovery. I guess I got into hip hop early 90s. Um, Depends when you count it, like crisscross in like 91 or something like that. So we were babies, like 92, and then getting into the real stuff from there. Like you discover that, Doggy Style and like Snoop and all and blah blah blah, like all of that, like late, like got the Chronic a couple years late, discover NWA, like and then you keep going through all of the stuff like Mob Deep and like all that kind of era. That shit was super powerful for us. But then I feel like I was like your age in the early 2000s, and sort of that was a different because now you're in the clubs. Now you're like out,
Yeah.
you're driving, you're jamming. Whereas like if I'm 15, 16, I'm in my bedroom by myself.
Yeah.
So it was like
Yeah.
would have been cool to go to like a club and hear all of the music that I was listening to in my bedroom. So it's definitely different times. So those two. Do you have? I guess do you have a favorite era, or is it?
Oh gosh. Um, it's tough because, like, I appreciate, I would say, almost every era. It's tough because, like, for me, it's really hard for me to say, like, "Oh, I really love, like, the '90s era," or "I really love, like, the
I guess you
early
weren't there.
2000s era," because I wasn't in it, and I think it's I
Some
don't
things you
wanna
have to be there.
discount it, but it's like, if I didn't feel it when it first came out, how can I sit here on a podcast and tell you, "Oh, that was my favorite era of music," when I wasn't bumping it back then, So it's like, it's really hard for me to say that. Um,
I agree with that. Sometimes you just gotta be there, and
yeah,
that's okay.
it's just like, it's different. Like, I have a really hard time, like, saying that with, like, like, just truthfully, like, I can't say that. So, I do, like, appreciate it. Like, I think, like, without legends from the '90s, without legends from the early 2000s, like, we wouldn't be in music where we are today. With that
Facts.
being said, I would say from my time, I would say probably, like, around that 2014 era. I mean, you had Kendrick with, like, Good Kid, Mad City, and then, like, a year after that, he drops To Pimp a Butterfly. You had 2014 Forest Hills Drive. You had early Drake. I mean,
Yep.
Drake has changed a lot, but you had early Drake. You had Kanye in, some of his best
Like,
years, some of his
presumably
most not his best, some of his most
Jesus-ish,
experimental years, I
Pablo?
would say.
Yeah. Oh, 100%.
Because
100%
like,
the most experimental.
he dropped Yeezus in
Twen
2013,
Was it
so, I
13?
mean,
Okay. And Pablo was 16, I think?
16, yeah.
16,
So,
okay.
I think that kind of, like, 2010 to, like, 2016-ish, I would say probably my
It's a cool
favorite
era.
era, just because I think, and we also weren't in the Spotify era yet, or streaming era. We were
Not as
still,
deep as we are now, no, you're right.
I mean, we were still buying music off iTunes, really. I mean, we had, like, Pandora. I remember Pandora was really big back then. But, like, it wasn't as deep as it was now. It was still kind of coming, so,
Yeah,
well,
no,
I would
you're
say
right.
back then.
That's a good period. And I remember when I moved to Canada permanently in 2010, and but the job I had beforehand, my boss was British, and I remember him showing me Spotify in 2010. I'm like, this is fucked. Why would, like I don't want this. Why would, like I want to like
Yeah,
and it just seems silly. And then
yeah,
now it's everywhere, and I was like,
yeah,
it's funny to see like all of that stuff change. It's just like this has been a big change time, but there's been some fire. I would agree. I think that's another wicked era for hip hop and for other genres too. Like that was a good time. It's only really
yeah.
lately it's been a bit weird or
It's been
patchy.
weird because there's I
Excuse me.
I've mentioned a lot on this podcast. There's been a ton of experimentation, and I think we're starting to come to a period where some of the people who have been in, like, the game for a while, they're, like, almost trying to redefine their voice or redefine something, and we talked about loyalty. I think they're trying to look for, like, that next hit song. Like, there's I don't know, it's interesting.
Hmm. Because they know even though they have the artist cachet and they've been around for so long, that
Yeah.
it's still a song-based era. So nobody can survive really. Well, not nobody,
There's
but
some. I mean, like, Drake, like, whatever he puts out is it's
it's
gonna
always
sell.
gonna
Like,
smash.
I would say
Yeah.
even, like, a guy like Travis, like and
Yeah.
I actually liked his album. I thought he
Utopia
actually
was great.
executed pretty well. So,
You talking
like,
Utopia,
he's kind
right?
of an exception, but, like, there are certain people who can get away with being sloppy.
Drake is one of them. Did you actually, this is because we argue about this on our podcast all the
Yeah.
time. So, what do you think of, For All the Dogs?
If the deluxe would have come out with For All the Dogs, like,
Different convo.
initially, I would have loved it. I think it was a little polluted. I don't think it needed to be 23 songs. But overall, I thought it was anywhere from decent to good. I think
Okay.
it's aged on me a lot, is what I'll say. My
Oh,
initial 2 or 3 listens, I was like, it's mid, it's okay.
mhm.
I think there's some great songs, but I also was like, it's kind of all over the place, which it still is, but I think I've come to, like, appreciate it a little bit more as it's aged, and I think the songs that are good on that album have continued to be in my playlist.
That's really good feedback. That's really thoughtful. I didn't like it at all. I thought it was, like, mid, like, and I'm a Drake, like, bit
Yeah.
since, like, '08, I've been into Drake.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, so I wanted to love it. I always wanna love his stuff, but he doesn't
Yeah.
always deliver shit that I wanna love, but the Scary Hours was fire. I really like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so I probably gotta go. I gave it 4 or 5 listens, and I was, like you said, polluted is a good word for it. It was just,
Just because, like, there's songs in there that I'm like, "Why is this in this album?"
s
Like, if I could take
exactly.
out certain songs, I seriously think if
You can get
you
it down to, like,
take
10 to
out,
12.
like, at least, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 songs out of that album, you could make that a decently good album, and that's why I said decent to good because, yes, you should look at it as a whole. I think albums should be cohesive. It's something I preach, but the highs I thought were pretty good, but the lows definitely brought it way down. So that's
Yeah,
that's where
the
I'm
lows
at
were
with
bad. That's fair.
yeah.
That's a very fair review. I'll give it another listen for sure then.
So all right, so you've mentioned he's your goat. What's your thought on Kanye West?
Still the GOAT, problematic as fuck, and it's
Very
okay.
problematic.
He's my problematic bro, I can't ever get past it. It was such an impactful time. That's why I honestly, it's mostly because of Kanye that era is so important to me, that early 2000s.
Yeah.
I was making my first group. Like, I ended up being a mixtape, but whatever, it was all original production. So it was like we were in the studio every day for like a year and a bit, and we got all the leaks of the College Dropout and of these freestyles where he's like doing verses over like "Give Me the Light" and like "Love You Better," the Cool J song, stuff like that. So we were like listening to Kanye. We'd never heard anyone rap like that before, and then hearing these beats and basically all the music I've ever made has been inspired by Kanye from the beginning, like the early
Yeah.
Kanye stuff.
Super
Um,
influential.
yeah, super. Like he's just the goat. So like, and obviously going into fashion and stuff, it's impeccable. I exclusively wear Yeezys, like shoes. This I got the Yeezy Gap on release t-shirts. I found them online recently. Well, the subreddits put you onto it, let's be real. But yeah, man, I don't know how do we need new Kanye music? Like, I don't know. I'm very curious about the the Ty Dolla Sign collab project. The Vulture song's pretty cool. I really like Donda. Donda 2 is like, I guess because it wasn't completed ever, so it's
Yeah.
a bit more mid. Like, obviously, I don't love everything, but a great example, Jesus is King. I didn't like that when it comes out. Now it's probably my third favorite. I think it's College Dropout,
Interesting,
Twisted
yeah.
Fantasy, and Jesus is King for me. Um, so it's yeah, he's the GOAT. I know he says stuff, but it's like sometimes, not everything. Sometimes what he's saying is fair. He's just a terrible messenger for
Oh,
a lot of
absolutely.
the stuff.
He's yeah.
Sometimes it's a bit wild, and
Yeah.
but I feel like it's almost like
And
he
sometimes he is out of
misconstrues.
line, but
Sometimes he's out of line, and sometimes I think he, like, has a point underneath all of the
mhm. He has
nonsense.
good intentions, yeah.
I don't think he has bad intention. I don't think he's trying to hurt anybody. I just don't think so. I don't think he's a bad human being. I think imagine being around all of that stuff and being in the Kardashian family and stuff. Well,
Yeah.
I'm not really that mad at either. Like, I don't know, Kim's a hustler. I respect it. But
Yeah.
my girlfriend watches the Kardashian show, and I always thought it was well, not watches it, like we just put it on at the end of the night, and I'm like, I quite like it. Like, it's funny, like to see these
Yeah.
rich people do stuff, and they're entertaining. So I'm not like mad at them. I used to be like super mad at him, but he's just been through a lot. Like, he manifested this whole thing and just through sheer will, to do it all. So I just have a lot of respect for him, and it does suck that yeah, he keeps saying stuff that whether it is crazy, whether there's a message underneath it or it's perceived as crazy, whatever it is, he's saying things that probably shouldn't be saying, and then that's affecting, the Yeezy drops of all keeps getting pushed and canceled and blah blah blah, which is like became my favorite little hobby. Um, so he's still the goat to me. Um,
Yeah.
through them, the warts and all, or whatever they say. So you mess
Yeah.
with you feel the same, you feel different.
I actually have always admired Kanye's work as a musical artist. I think even as a I went to school for apparel design, so it's cool to see even him on the apparel side and his effect on that. I think he does get his flowers now and then. I think it's been shaded a little bit as the modern era. We just kind of remember, what he says, what he tweets, whatever. But I think if you look at him like not surface level, but if you look at what he's done, I mean, as a musical artist, look at the influence. You want to talk about Utopia, and we just talked about Travis Scott's album. Like so much of Kanye's Yeezus album was in that album.
Yeah,
Like he continually, you will hear similar sounding production, similar sounding voices, like and the journey he's been on. I mean, like the Chipmunk Orchestra that he used to have, like that was huge for a while. Like, I
the
mean,
best.
just he brought so much, and like even artists like Drake, I don't think he is as big as he is now without Kanye because Drake's gone on and said, like, without Kanye, like, I wouldn't be like singing like I did. Like, he kind of made it cool to sing before it was cool to sing, Like, I don't know. I
For
think
sure.
he's super influential. I think he's really created a path in a lot of ways for a lot of people
Yeah.
because, like, sorry, I could go on and on about this, but
No,
like
just
Kanye, even in terms of fashion, like, he kinda created that whole world, like, not totally, but I think in the modern era, he created that world because, like, of course, you have guys like, Run DMC, who was huge back in the day, like, with, like, their fashion and, collaborations and that kinda thing, but, like, he had, like, his own separate kind of brand and, like, was able to promote it so big and make it so exclusive,
yeah,
which was different, So I think he's been a lot of stepping stones for a lot of artists, and
I
I just
agree.
think he needs a lot of credit on that for sure.
Yeah, I feel like people are now quicker to write him off. A lot like if I share something on Twitter of Ye, what I say it's like an anniversary of an album, people are like, the fuck are you retweeting that for? Like, I'm like, I get it, I really do, and maybe I did that too soon, too close to a
Yeah.
controversy or whatever. But like, yeah, you just can't deny. I mean, it's like it's a dude who has had mental health problems, and I'm not
Yep.
saying what he said was because of that, but you do have to take that into consideration. And you have these little episodes and such like that, and you say things, and you know, because of cancel culture as such, people are just like you say one thing wrong, boom. It's not like he R. Kelly'd anybody. You know, like,
Yeah.
he didn't physically hurt anybody, like, he's just a super opinionated person, and I just feel like he's impact like, you're right, like, who else has gone and started a billion-dollar, fashion company
Yeah.
after also basically you remember there was a time when if you didn't have a single produced by Kanye in the 2000s, like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
So it's, there's a lot to be credited for what we're listening to today, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and what's even cool about him is, like, I would say he's equally as good of a producer as he is an artist.
For
Like,
sure, yeah, and it
I
was
mean, the guy like, that can't be undersold too, because like, we've had a lot of good producers and rappers, like, I mean, of course, an OG like Dr. Dre, but, like, I mean, he made it so cool and it was so diverse and executed experimentation so well too,
yeah.
so
And there's a whole new style of rapping, that conversational style. And that's why I liked Drake in the beginning. My friend, funnily enough, in Atlanta in '08 sent me Comeback Season. I was like, oh shit. Fun, quick story. At the time, MySpace was still going, and Drake's MySpace, he had an email on there. It was talk2drake@gmail.com. And I can't find the email unless I have some sort of like memory or I've moved into a different parallel dimension or something. But I emailed them because I was at the time when MySpace came, I was like, oh my God, I can get in touch with all these American rappers and do songs with them. And we got,
yeah.
we did some with Emilio Rojas and a couple like Cesar Comanche and Sean Don from the Justice League, who's like little brother, and like cats like that, like Hezekiah and stuff. But then I emailed Drake. I didn't know he was on Degrassi. I just liked him because he sounded like Kanye West. And then I emailed him and they quoted me 2 grand for a verse. And I was like,
Oh,
I was
wow.
used to paying 250 for the. I'm like, fuck that, 2 grand US, like, and then add the currency convert. No, bro, and biggest regret of my life. And I can't prove it. I've looked through
That's
my old like,
crazy.
and I think it's either that or I DM the account, and obviously everything's gone off MySpace, so I can't prove it.
So you
I
almost had Drake on a song for 2K.
for 2K, I'm now be like 500K, a million, if you're just gonna pay him a bet, unless he just liked you and he just does it. It's so crazy, but I guess,
That's ridiculous. Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
that was my big regret, but
Well, I mean, like, you know how they always have, like, the conversions of, like, back in 1972, like, it's like that, but with a
yeah,
rapper.
and with a rapper
That's
fee, because the
crazy.
fee
Oh my
went up and
gosh.
then the currency went up. Yeah, it's a big miss on my part, but if I knew he was on Degrassi, I would have been like, because we grew up with the original Degrassi in the '80s, and, I probably would have put the money up. I would be like, "Alright, fuck it, let's do it." And it would have got us some burn. One of my boys did that with Kendrick in 2011,
Yeah.
and did a song with him and ended up releasing it in 2015, and he calls it the gift that keeps on giving, because
Oh,
the longer
yeah.
it's a whole other story because they took it down. Top Dog took it down because he put the song out right before the rollout for To Pimp a Butterfly, and then my boy had to take him to court, and he won in court in Canada, so that it wasn't applicable in the States, so we would have had to go there, and he had Universal, like, threatening him on the phone with their lawyers and stuff. It was crazy. Then he got all of this press surrounding it, like, it was kinda wild. So I was like, "Fuck, that could have been us. God damn it." All good
That's
though.
wow. Wow,
Yeah, I
I
know,
feel like
right?
you're just full of these stories that are crazy. Gotta
It's funny
pick
when
your
you
brain
think
some
about it.
more, so
Yeah, man,
yeah.
it's funny thinking, I don't know, you gotta think about all this stuff. I'm like, "Yeah, man, I'm old as shit, like, we've been doing this for a minute." But it's funny when you like, look back and like, yeah, all these little things are just sort of, like, added up over time. I'm like, man,
Yeah.
it's kinda cool.
Alright.
Yeah.
Favorite Yeezy silhouette?
Okay.
And we're talking shoes,
Talking
not like
shoes.
t-shirt yeah.
Not like different Yeezy Yay fashion era. Alright, so
Yeah.
the silhouette that's probably the fave. Okay. The, hang on. The 350 V2 is
V2.
always the classic. Like, this is
Here,
probably
hold
my
hold on one sec, one sec.
here we go. You gonna bust out the zebras. We gonna see some zebras right here. Is it still too hard? Too fire. Not yellowed yet, fortunately. Hey, there you go, my man.
Little
Yours
blue
look older
tint
than mine.
section.
I got the blue tints right there. Let's go.
So there you
So I would
go.
say the favorites, and I got the same question for you. So favorite silhouette would be the 350, but I would, if I was to say a favorite of all time, hang on, it's right here, would be the waves.
Oh,
I think
wow,
the
really?
waves are the hardest Yeezy of all time, and this was like a big change for me to sort of bust into these bad boys. I just think they're the sickest shoes. They're so comfy. I like that they've got like I don't wear many colors. I'm more like monotone kind of cat, but I like
Yeah.
that they've got little subtle color splashes. It just
Yeah.
works so well. So I think the 350s are cool, but these are a little more like versatile across the board.
Absolutely,
Um,
yeah.
but the comfiest ones would be the three. I can't reach them. Oh no, because I'm wearing them. They're upstairs. The 350 compacts. Have you worn them?
Mm-mm.
You know the ones I talk about?
I Are they the newer ones?
They're newer ones, and they look like an inside
Yeah, they
out
kinda like
three.
yeah. I know
They
what you're
look,
talking about, yep.
and they've got this like up on the upper part. They got like
Yeah.
there's this pillow like cushion.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, it's so comfortable. It's insane. So either them or like the 500s. The
Mhm.
guys here. I got big ass feet, and these ones are don't fit in the thing properly. The 500 highs. So
Oh.
these are super comfy, and I got these.
Mhm.
Normally, I go half a size up. So these were a full size up, and I think it was either they didn't have mine or they didn't offer it. But
Yeah.
it's maybe because of the ankle support. It's so comfy. And I was talking to a dude on the Yeezy subreddit, and he was saying that he plays basketball in them, and they're great. So I actually thought
Mm.
about using them, trying them for that as well. But these are sick for they're a little much for the warm weather, but now like we're in Canada, obviously it's horrendous right now. Um, these are money. Probably not so much with the suede in the snow, but if it's just
Yeah.
cold, these are sick. These are so comfy. What are you what are yours? What are your tops?
Oh gosh, I mean, I only have that pair, but
But
back in the day, I loved the original release with him and Adidas, with the Pirate
oh
Blacks and the
yeah, the
Oxford Tans and the
turtle
Moon
dove.
Rocks. Oh my gosh.
The 350 V1s, I guess they are.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that release. I like still and even like some people didn't like these. I like the 750s too. Those I thought those were hard, especially when people could pull them off. I couldn't pull them off. I didn't have the body type for them. You
Right.
have to be a specific person to pull them off. But I definitely think like that release was huge. I think his second release was great too. But I think also like you want to talk about like eras, like being in a good time and a good place in your life. Like I think I was in a good place in my life to like that collection, but,
Right.
those are probably my favorite.
Those
I've only had those on, so I mean, I guess that those are my comfiest, but
it's
I've
that's fair.
heard that some of the other ones are pretty comfy as well, so
The
what are the
3
80? I'm sorry.
Oh, 380s. Yeah, I got them. Oh, they're
Yeah, yeah,
upstairs too.
380s, yeah.
380s are 380s are dope. I only got one
Yep.
pair. There's like a on the Yeezy subreddit, people were going nuts for a while, just posting 380s. It was like a big trend and stuff. I think they're the funniest looking ones. It's like, oh well, the compacts are probably the funniest looking ones, but 380s are good. I got almost. I got like 18 pairs. I think I got like almost one of every silhouette. I'm still missing a few. But the 380s are cool. I didn't love a lot of them enough because like they're not cheap, right? So if you're gonna like
Yeah,
once when they were doing the drops, and once I discovered the Confirmed app, like it was only like 3.5 years ago, I just went kind of nuts. I was getting
yeah,
everything I could. But the yeah, 380s are cool. The foams are fun. The foams are super
yeah,
dope.
foam
Not
runners, yeah.
Yeah, the foam runners are really cool. They're really comfy as well, like for longer standing. Um 700s, 500s. Oh, the weirdest ones that are the least comfy would be the 450s, like the ones that look like an alien.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are cool. I got the first drop from that, the dark slate, I think was the colorway. I just can't
Yeah,
reach them; they're back there. But they're like all the rest have boost. Essentially, I think
yeah,
almost every one has boost. That one is just like a flat
yeah,
little sole type of thing. So it's
yeah.
short wear type
I
of
think
thing.
like the one thing in terms of legacy wise, like that Adidas Yeezy has like over like Jordan Brand, it's like they're way comfier.
Right. I haven't worn. I don't think. No, I've never owned Jordans really. I got like yeah
Yeah.
one.
I
I
mean, like
I
I'll
heard they're
be because
hit or
I'll
miss.
wear Jordans to work sometimes and I'm like, oh my God, my
Ugh.
feet, man. Like I like to look dope, but like, God damn it.
You don't want to be in pain, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've never had any pain at all. And you're right with the boost. The boost is
yep.
fantastic. That's the biggest disappointment about the partnership breaking up. And it seemed
Yeah.
like it's not going to be fixed. And they were going to do a drop this month, and now they pushed it to next year. But to get rid of the remaining stock, but the boost is pretty important, I think, for
Yeah.
the comfort of them. But they're the
Mhm.
best. That's my favorite shoes of all. They all look so fire. I was a little worried because that's all I've got. I guess a few other shoes. I'm not going to wear them, but I only wear like I got slides on right now for the house. I got house slides, outside slides. Like I really went in, and I'm like, oh, when all the crazy shit was happening, I was like, oh, I wonder if I'm gonna say something. The fuck you wearing those? Like. But fortunately, no one said anything. I think it's because I'm not in like if I was in Toronto a lot, maybe it might have been different when it was peak, but a slightly smaller city makes it a bit easier to get away with. But yeah, still the GOAT, the best shoes. And hopefully if him and Adidas doesn't work out, then he'll do it himself or partner with another brand in the same way to get him out. I
I
hope
love
so.
it. I love
Yeah,
it.
brother.
Yeah. We'll see where he goes.
Yeah.
All right. I want to give you a chance to plug where people can find yourself. Yeah.
Yes, sir. So the best way CEEFOR on Instagram and Twitter. That was just me personally. I guess we talked about a whole other bunch of stuff, but it'd be a million different things. So that would be that. The music is on all the main, Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff. It's under CEE. The problem is when I chose that name, I didn't think about SEO or because it wasn't a thing. So I was like, oh fuck, there's a million people with that name. So the easiest, if you put like my last album, solo album was called Relentless. So you can put like C Relentless and it'll come up. So all the music main stuff's there. There's different stuff on Bandcamp and on SoundCloud and stuff, but the Spotify music, if you're interested in any of that stuff. And the podcast we do is called the music one. It's called Bad Habits. So it's called Bad Habits with C and Notion because that's another thing that had a few other ones. But yeah, that would be tonight. That's what we spoke about the most because then there's the agency stuff and then the craft beer stuff. But
Mhm.
that would be the best thing. Then hit us up, man. This has been
Yeah.
great. Great convo, dude. Really appreciate you.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on. Like I've really am trying to expand, my hip hop knowledge and that kind of thing. So I really thought your perspective was great. It was a lot of fun. We
Thank you,
had
man.
some great
Likewise.
conversations. So
Hell yeah.
thanks again for coming on.
It's a pleasure.